two guests here, and John Brunner, who's running for the United States Senate on the Republican side, was just in the studio last week, if I'm not mistaken. How are you, John?
Good to be back again.
Yeah, you brought a friend with you. I'm going to let you do the introductions. How does that sound?
Well, I did bring a friend here and a mentor and someone who's been a great encouragement to me, Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, another citizen senator, another manufacturer, another person with a heart to help this country and turn it around. And all we need to do is get a few more people engaged in politics who have years of experience and a career to bring to Washington, D.C., and we'll get this country back on track.
Senator Johnson, it is a pleasure to meet you in person. Thanks for coming to St. Louis.
Well, Mark, thanks for inviting me in.
I spent, as I often refer to it, lovingly so, I spent 9 years in the People's Republic of Wisconsin. And I was up on vacation a couple of years ago. I go to Door County most every year. And 2 summers ago, before your election, I started seeing these Ron Johnson signs. And I thought I knew Wisconsin politics because of my time there. And I know Scott Walker. I know Congressman Ryan. I had never heard of you before, and it was just a great political story. You want to, I've told part of it there, but how in the world did a guy that really a lot of people hadn't heard of get elected and defeat, and there's some parallels here to John Brunner, a long-term incumbent in the state of Wisconsin?
Well, I guess kind of snuck up on him, but really the reason I ran was really the whole debate over the health care law. And this is an unkind paraphrase, but I remember President Obama saying that these greedy, money-grubbing doctors, they'll take out a set of tonsils for a few extra bucks. And I found that pretty offensive, Mark, because our first child was born with a pretty serious congenital heart defect. One of those greedy, money-grubbing doctors came in the middle of the night at 1:30 in the morning and saved her life, and then 8 months later, when her heart was the size of a small plum, a group of incredibly dedicated, skilled medical professionals totally reconstructed the upper chamber of her heart. Her heart operates backwards now, but she's 29 years old. She's a nurse herself in a neonatal intensive care unit. So when I heard this president, our president, demonize those types of people that dedicate their lives to saving other people's lives, that kind of got my dander up, and that's why I got involved.
Wow, that, and I did not know that part of the story, and that's awesome. I've often told a story from that perspective. I had eye surgery many years ago, and I had to have an expert, retina expert, put a buckle around. And I love the part of the story. His name was Dr. Blinder. He's here in St. Louis, but I am a big fan of medical experts and what they can do. And I'm concerned. One of the concerns that I have about Obamacare is that we're going to create disincentives for people to want to be those experts in these medical fields that we need.
No, you cannot demonize success. You can't vilify businesses and expect to have those things. And that's why we need people like John Brunner. Somebody who actually has lived a life. And we need more citizen legislators, but people that have lived a life, had a full career, understands really where real job creation occurs in the private sector. That's where long-term self-sustaining jobs come from. Respects the private sector. We don't have enough of that in Washington. We certainly don't have it with this administration.
When you were running, and John knows that I've played this commercial, and I'm going to play it again today because I loved it. You're running for the Senate, and this aired in the state of Wisconsin. It made its way nationally because of blogs as well. And I think it sums things up here. And for people who have heard it before, I don't think they'll mind hearing it again. This is Ron Johnson's ad from a couple of years ago.
There are 100 members of the U.S. Senate. 57 of them, including Russ Feingold, are lawyers. That would be fine if we had a lawsuit to settle. But we have an economy to fix. There are 0 manufacturers and 1 accountant. It's no wonder we're losing jobs and piling up debt. I'm not a politician. I'm an accountant and a manufacturer. I know how to balance a budget, and I do know how to create jobs. Now that's something we could really use. I'm Ron Johnson, and I approve this message.
That's like my favorite political ad ever, and I know you're proud of another one that you did, but it really hits home, and I think it resonates with people, and that's so important. I think even in this race right now with John, I think there are a lot of people in Missouri, hopefully you'll grant some permission to do a variation of that ad, that would say, yeah, that's part of the problem, right?
Well, it absolutely is. Now, we've doubled the number of accountants, but I'd love to double the number of manufacturers, and if the folks from Missouri would get behind John, we could just do exactly that.
Do you think that with this president, we don't know what's going to happen in the presidential race. Let's say the numbers improve with the help of a John Brunner or elsewhere. One of the frustrations that people have is that you have this gridlock in Washington right now. What have you learned in your short time in Washington as far as, because one of the things I like about you, Senator Johnson, and I think John would vouch for me and other people, I talk about you quite a bit on the show because I think you're one of those guys that actually talks about ideas and really, maybe I'm naive, but really wants to change things in Washington. But you're up against it.
Sure. Well, listen, I certainly went to Washington willing to work with anybody that is willing to, first of all, acknowledge the problem and then work with me in good faith to solve the problem. But we don't have enough of those folks there. And this is really, Tom Coburn's, who also has recognized the potential of John Brunner here and has endorsed him. He made the comment that, really there's been a little bit too much getting along in Washington for decades. This is a bipartisan problem here, that the out-of-control spending, the growth in government, the growth of government's control over our lives. So the bottom line is it's a political process. We have two starkly different ideologies that are competing in this country right now. You've got what President Obama and his allies want to do, which is grow government's control over our lives. And then you have people like me and John that actually understand that it's freedom, the free enterprise system, self-reliance. That's what made America great. And that's the kind of path we need to go on, because the fact of the matter is growing government is not going to solve the problem. We need to grow the private sector.
What are the lessons that you've told John? And John, I'd like to hear your perspective on this, because you're new at all this politics, and I think that's refreshing to a lot of people. But look, Senator McCaskill, you got to get past the primary first. Senator McCaskill is a big name in Missouri, even with your primary opponents. I mean, there's no lock on this nomination, so it's a tough prospect in just trying to get your name across the state of Missouri and people to get to know you. So, what have you learned from Ron Johnson and vice versa?
Well, first of all, I am new to politics, but I'm not new to problem solving. I'm not new to getting the job done. In our company, we're known as a go-to can-do. The whole idea is, first of all, as Senator Johnson said, agree that there's a problem and define the problem. And that's the first step to be solving the problem. Then you have a good discussion, you have a robust debate, and then you come up with a solution to solve that. I've done that hundreds of thousands of times in my business career, pulling teams of people way back to the times I served in the Marine Corps. And so it is those resources and those experiences that you bring to Washington, D.C., not this thing called politics. And the other aspect, though, is true, and the fundamental is that you have to get out and meet people and tell your story and have them understand what your motivation is and give them a background of where your experiences are and look them straight in the eye and say, I'm here to help solve problems. I've done it my life. And there's a correlation between the more people that I meet, the greater the support is, because it's a very simple message. It's a very clear message. It's a message that people are hungry for. And there's just, frankly, as Senator Johnson would say, just far too few people in Washington, D.C. who want to go there, solve a problem, and get back home.
Why should people believe him, though, Senator Johnson? Well, there's a lot of cynicism out there.
Sure. First of all, when you're in business, you are solving problems every day. And the first rule of solving a problem, when you start dealing with other individuals, you first figure out what you agree on. You don't concentrate on what you disagree on. And so much of Washington right now is just all concentrated on this is what the disagreement is. No, you first have to understand, what do we agree on? And I think really we agree on the same goal. Truthfully, I think we all want to see a prosperous America. We want to make sure that every American has the opportunity to build a good life for themselves and their family. Now, we have wildly different views on how you start solving that problem. But again, you also have to acknowledge you have a problem, and far too few members of Congress actually even acknowledge the problem, much less work in good faith to solve it. So, I mean, here's a little factoid. The Senate hasn't passed a budget in over 3 years.
I know.
I mean, that's unfortunately not widely reported or known as it should be, but think about that. It's jaw-dropping. This president has presented 4 budgets, never has proposed yet a solution to save Social Security and Medicare. His last 2 budgets have been subjected to 3 votes, 2 in the Senate, 1 in the House. You know what the tally is? 0 to 610. Now, that's a stunning repudiation of his leadership, and unfortunately, Senator Claire McCaskill is an ally. I mean, provided the deciding vote on health care, provided the deciding vote on the failed stimulus. I mean, that's the choice for Missouri. That's the choice for America.
Hang tight. We're coming back with more. John Brunner, who's running for the United States Senate in Missouri. He's brought in Ron Johnson from the state of Wisconsin. We're coming back with more in a moment on KMOX. Bring Senator Johnson in as he's helping him campaign for what John hopes will become his own Senate seat here in Missouri. And Senator Johnson, let me ask you, because obviously there's a primary, and I asked you about Wisconsin here off the air. There's a primary in Wisconsin. You have not endorsed in that particular primary. What makes you say John Brunner's the guy over these other candidates in Missouri?
Well, as I tell the primary voters in Wisconsin, I'd say the same advice here for the primary voters in Missouri. The first question you should ask is, why is this person running for this office? Are they running for U.S. Senator because they want to be a U.S. Senator, because they want to be somebody? Or are they running because they love this country? They understand that our nation's in peril, and they're actually going to Washington to start solving the problems, not just to become a senator, because we need people there that are going to be making tough decisions, taking hard votes, and not voting with the reelection in mind, but voting with what's in the best interest of the country in mind. And so I see that in John Brunner. I see somebody who served his country as a Marine. He volunteered. He didn't have to do that. And he's lived that full life, and he's going to bring that lifetime of experience to bear, and he's going there because he understands we need to start fixing the problems here, and he's dedicated to doing that.
Senator McCaskill will tell me, and she has, and she will say this throughout the campaign, that she's that type of person, that she's bucked her own party on several issues, and that she's not afraid to go against the president. Senator Johnson, how would you respond to that?
Well, my guess is she probably bucks her party like Russ Feingold did in the election year. And again, you point out the fact that she was the deciding vote for the passage of Obamacare, which will destroy our health care system and our budget. That's a twofer right there. She was the deciding vote on the failed stimulus. No, she will back the party when they need her. She'll take the convenient vote. She'll team up with people now during the election cycle, I'm sure. But you really got to find out, ask her those hard questions. Where was she when we really needed her to prevent the implementation and the passage of Obamacare?
You endorsed Mitt Romney, didn't you, when he was running in the primary in Wisconsin?
Yes.
I know that I saw some coverage of that, and Carson Ryan did as well. There are still plenty of conservatives that are very skeptical of what type of leader Mitt Romney could be if he's elected president. What convinced you? Two
pieces of advice. Read his book, No Apology. It's excellent. He lays out the problems. He lays out the solutions. And I also had the advantage I was able to meet with him. And I came away from that meeting thoroughly convinced that he understands the problem. He'll be dedicated to solving it. He's ready, willing, and able to lead on the issue. I have no doubts that he will repeal Obamacare, or short of having enough senators to do that, through the budgetary process, stop its implementation. So I came away convinced that he will be a very strong leader. And by the way, he served in the private sector. He understands it. He respects it, just like John Brunner. Those are the types of people we need. This administration, this president, has no experience in the private sector. Members of his administration don't. It's no mystery to me why they're unable to create jobs. We need people that have created jobs to go to Washington to figure out how to fix it.
I think people, John, you can jump in on this. I think people are skeptical as far as what the role of government could be or should be in creating jobs. And there are people hurting out there. I don't care what side of the political spectrum you're in, or if you're in Wisconsin or Missouri. There have been people that have been out of work for a long time. The housing crisis is still not over. And people throw up their hands and say, well, you guys in Washington haven't really, done anything. And can you? I don't know. I think that's a legitimate question. What can you do? Regulation gets talked about. There's tax policy. What else?
Well, not only regulation, which as I get across the state, that's the first thing that people tell me. They're getting tremendously overloaded with the burdens of the regulation of the week, the regulation of the month. And they're saying, this is not sustainable. We can't follow these regulations and meet these. But we have the highest tax rate now in the world. We also don't have an energy policy. And we know that a lower energy cost by having plenty of energy available will bring the jobs back. And we need tort reform. These are all things that are solvable and fixable if you bring people to Washington, D.C. who really want to solve problems, as opposed to putting their finger up in the air and saying what it takes to get reelected.
Well, let me chime in on regulations. This administration, Small Business Administration, commissioned a study to find out what does it cost to comply with federal regulations in a year. $1.75 trillion in the year 2008. That's a larger number than all but 8 economies in the world. That's what we burden our job creators with each and every year. And oh, by the way, since 2008, we've added another 11,000 rules and regulations to that burden. So it's no mystery to me why job creators are having a hard time creating jobs.
What about tax policy? You're going to hear this throughout the course of John's campaign and throughout the fall between Mitt Romney and President Obama, that the wealthy need to pay more of their fair share. Guys like you guys need to pay more in taxes. That's part of the solution to the fiscal crisis. Your response to that is what?
Anybody who thinks that, ask a simple question. How many jobs will that tax increase create? How will that tax increase grow our economy? I mean, the answer is it won't. It might feel good, but it'll harm economic growth, which has to be the number one component to the solution here. We can't totally grow our way out of this. We got to restrain the rate of growth and spending. We have to grow our economy. The way you get more revenue is the old-fashioned way, by making more jobs, creating more taxpayers, increasing revenue the old-fashioned way by growing our economy.
What about some of these big issues, and I don't know how much we're going to hear about them throughout the course of the campaign because they get kind of complicated and they don't poll well, but Medicare reform, for example. Congressman Ryan and I have spent a lot of time talking about that. I think he's on the right path. He spent a lot of time 7-8 years ago, it might even go back 10 years now, on Social Security reform. You referred to that earlier. These are these big issues, Medicare and Medicaid in particular, though, that are bankrupting the country. But when we bring it up, the other side says you're trying to, kill Medicare as we know it. It gets demagogued.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it does get demagogued. And the first thing I have to point out is that when people are talking about reforming both Medicare and Social Security, they're not talking about doing anything with current retirees or, quite honestly, anybody about to retire. They pretty well wall those folks off because they plan their lives around these.
That gets lost in the translation a lot
absolutely.
of times.
We're talking, first of all, if you don't reform the programs, they won't be around. They will not survive. So if you want to end them, that's the best way. Do nothing. So what we're talking about, people that are actually serious about this, is reforming these programs for future generations, people under the age of 55. And you do it by recognizing the fact that when Social Security was first instituted, the retirement age was set at 65. Life expectancy was 62. Now, there's a retirement program and there's an entitlement that works. But now our life expectancy is 79. You have to start recognizing that. You have to start bumping that age requirement up a little bit for younger people. I mean, that just makes sense.
John Brunner, thanks for coming in with Senator Johnson. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's good to be back with you here. And there's a clear message out here for the folks in Missouri is that America doesn't have to be this way. We don't have to go the direction we're going. We can get our jobs back. I think of these recent college graduates that are coming here to the workforce, 53% underemployment. With a few changes, with the right kind of people, with a citizen senator up in Washington, D.C., we can make the changes and get America working.
Let me toss this out because I think this might time out well. Something for you to put on your calendar, Senator Johnson. Right before the election, I think it's like October 23rd, the Packers play the Rams down here in St. Louis. Now, this will disappoint many people here in St. Louis, but I am a Packers fan. I'm not a Rams fan. I love the Packers. That was one thing from spending all my years up in Wisconsin. I was there at a good time when Favre was there, and it's fun to watch them. But the Rams are going to be better. Toss it in. But right before you can come back and campaign here, if Brunner's the nominee, think about that.
Well, I think everybody would appreciate the play of Aaron Rodgers now, too. So he's just a fun guy to watch. So
absolutely.
I'd love to come back down.
All right, we'll see if we can lock it in. Hey, thanks for coming in. It's great to meet you in person.
Thanks for having me in, Mike.
John, good to see you.
Good to be